What's up, Sports Desk Massive? It's the new and improved. What you say?
Text message.
Can't stop to make a call. Well, you can still add your 2 cents by sending in WhatsApp messages or voice notes to 876-828-0925. What you say? During the Sports Desk, Mondays to Fridays, 1 to 4 p.m. Sponsored by BH Paints. Paint it. Love it with BH Paints.
The Scoreboard, Mondays to Fridays, one of the best sports programs on radio. The Scoreboard features informative, investigative, and hard-hitting sports discussions with top-quality guests. Join us 5 to 6 p.m. with our A-list hosts as we inform and entertain. That's The Scoreboard, Mondays to Fridays, 5 to 6 p.m.
It's now time for Sports in a Minute. It's sponsored by Dangerous Auto Spares and Accessories Limited, Edgechem, Any Bet, and Milestone Restaurant Bar and Grill. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray starred as the Denver Nuggets beat the Miami Heat 109-94 to take a 2-1 lead in the NBA Finals series last evening. Now, Jokic scored 32 points, becoming the first player to record 30 points, 20 rebounds, and 10 assists in the finals. And Murray finished with 34 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists, complete his own triple-double in the final seconds. The best-of-7 series resumes at the same venue, that's Casey Center in Miami on Friday. That's all the time we have for your Sports in a Minute. Sports in a Minute was sponsored by Dangerous Auto Spares and Accessories Limited at 20 Balmoral Avenue, Kingston 10. Call 876-929-9146 and in Maypen. Edgechem, changing lives 1 gallon at a time. Any Bet, your best bet, reminds you to bet responsibly. At Milestone Restaurant Bar and Grill, celebrate good food, celebrate good vibes.
It will get better. It will get better. Won't last forever. Won't last forever.
Let me say good morning to you. You know when you hear that sound on a Monday and on a Thursday, it is time for Final Decision. For those who are waiting, we apologize. We are a bit behind time, but we thank you so much for having stick and stayed with us here on Omega KLAS 89 FM. Miss Bowen just took you out earlier with the heat of the morning into the afternoon, and I know you were really enjoying that segment. She'll be back later. Worry not. But for the time being, for the next half an hour, I am Mark Maitland, and I will be with you this morning. This morning, I'll be riding solo as my co-host, Errol Green, who you are used to hearing with me at this time, is currently unable to be here with us. And so for the next half an hour, I'll be dispensing valuable information in relation to what happens in the funeral industry and how we can navigate in these trying times as we make the final decisions. So on our last program, we talked about death in hospitals, what to do, the documents that are needed, and what happens in relation to the process and why the process takes so long at times. Since our last program, some individuals have reached out to ask what's the procedure when somebody dies at, say, for example, a nursing home or a private care facility, because they have questions in what to do and how to navigate with these types of situations. And so this morning, we're going to be talking somewhat about that and just to give you insights as to what to do to make the process a whole lot easier. But before we get into all of that, because that's a whole lot to digest today, if you are able to, if you have not yet done so, I ask you to get your pen and paper or pencil or whatever it is. If you have a device and you're able to type fast enough, then you can also get your device and let's get ready, because information that is needed is going to be given to you in a little while. Now, there are 3 basic pieces of documents that are needed in our country or in our society. And most business places, for example, financial institution and or insurance company, will ask for these. And I know some persons are a bit reluctant in getting at least one of these documents. And others of us, we do have the documents, but we put them away so properly, we can't find them. And then it becomes a problem when we are to, for example, deal with deaths in our family and have the documentation done. I know especially for our older family members, maybe parents, grandparents, so on and so forth, especially the birth certificate is something that we don't readily have on hand. So I'm going to say to you this morning, it is very important, it is very critical that every one of us has or have a birth certificate. So if you're uncertain right now as to where your birth certificate is, or if you have one, I think you should go into your archives to see if you have a birth certificate that is still intact. If you have senior citizens, aged loved ones that you are taking care of, have the conversation with them in relation to their birth certificate. They may know it as H paper. So you have that conversation with them. Where's your H paper? Where's your birth certificate? See if it is in good condition. And if it is one of those long time brown paper, you can, with that number, put in an application at the Registrar General's Department to get an updated birth certificate. Because this is a document that you will need to help you navigate through the process of funeral preparations when that time comes. There are situations where individuals have been in mortuaries for a while now, can't be buried because a critical piece of document, which is known as the birth certificate, cannot be ascertained. And so documentations now have to be done in order to see how expeditiously they can come up with a birth certificate so the process will continue. It is often been said that when you're alive, much attention is not paid to you by the government, that is. But at the time of death, that's when everything is required. That, since that is known to be true, let me help you to help yourself to prevent the headache when that time comes. And so you will definitely need to have a birth certificate, because nothing will be done that needs to be done without a proper birth certificate. And for more reasons than one, the most obvious is that we must be sure that you are at least a citizen of Jamaica. You are born to Jamaica, in Jamaica, for example. So, and it serves other purposes, but it is very important that you have a birth certificate. The next piece of document that must be had is a government issued identification, whether it's a national ID, driver's license, or a passport. And I know that individuals will often say they're not going to take an ID photo, or they don't need an ID because they don't intend to vote. The ID serves a greater purpose than just for voting, especially if you don't have a passport or a driver's license. It is the government issued, the electoral national ID, that is used as the form of identification in many situations. And so even if you have no intentions of voting, do not heed to the reluctance of getting a national ID. That is, I would say, one of the easiest identifications to get, because it is free. However, if you have a passport or a driver's license, then of course this negates the need for any other alternate form of identification, because at least you'll have something. But for hospital registrations, you will need an ID, you will need a birth certificate. At the time of death, these documents must be produced in order for the process to be easier on the part of the next of kin. The next thing that will be required of you is the TRN. You must have a TRN. TRN forms part of the documents that are needed, will be required, whether by hospitals, whether by the police, whether by other agencies, because the truth is none of us know how nor when we will die. And some processes are more tedious than others. Some processes require more information than others. And when it relates to, for example, financing the funerals, insurance companies will need a form of identification, TRN, and also your birth certificate. And so it is a conversation that we need to have, not only with ourselves, but with those we are caring for, especially those who are ill. Ensure that you ascertain where these documents are. And if for example, there's anyone lacking, see how soon or how best you can have these documents sorted out. Because part of the process that we were talking about on our last program on Monday, part of what slows down the process sometimes is on the part of the client or on the part of the deceased, because there are some documents that are needed that, because they're not present, the process is slowed down or halted, and individuals are not able to have the final disposition of their relatives in the turnaround time that they would love. And so I encourage you to ensure at least you have these basic documents that will help you through the process at the time of death. So death at hospitals was what we covered, and how to navigate that, what to do, and also reasons why the process may be slower in some cases than in others. Like we talked about, again, there are situations where some hospitals have a contracted private funeral home, and at the time of death, your loved one will be moved to this private facility, because when a person dies, when there's no longer the bodily functions taking place, oxygen entering the body, carbon dioxide leaving, the blood, the heart is pumping blood, when all of these cease, it is natural for the body to begin to break down. And so steps have to be taken to ensure that when you come to either transfer your loved ones to your funeral home of choice, or you come for burial, your loved one is in a state that is representative of what you want as close as possible. You don't want a situation where when you come for your loved one, then they are in a state of decomposition. And so part of the reason why funeral homes are brought into play from this early stage is to ensure that at least your loved one is stored in such a manner that they are, at least their features can be preserved somewhat, and we restore the process of decomposition until they get to that place where final care will be administered. And so these contracted funeral homes will come into play to do the storage. But the hospitals have a procedure, have a process. And again, yes, some will take longer than others. So you might have a situation where you would have encountered, or you would have done this type of procedure with one particular hospital, and the turnaround time was a day or two, and now you have a different hospital and you're wondering why it is taking a week. But the procedures sometimes are different in different institutions. And so patience is required. Work as best as you possibly can with the administrators. And friends, being rude won't help the process. Yes, we are grieving. Yes, we are frustrated. But being rude with those who are trying to assist you will not expedite the process. It will add to the frustration of an already tasked workforce. So try as best as possible, please, to be patient with those at the hospital. Keep open communication lines. So, for example, if they promise that they will contact you by Friday the 9th at 10 o'clock, and you see Friday the 9th at 10 o'clock comes and you're not contacted, give them a call. So when you're having that initial conversation and they say you'll be contacted, try to get the contact number for an individual or for the department. And yes, I know the headache with calling, for example, especially government institutions and not getting through. I know that headache. So at least try to see if you can get the number for an individual or a direct line, a direct extension to somebody that you can call to follow up, so that you can, help to get the process done as smoothly as possible. It is very, very important. I stress on this. It is very important, friends, that you have the requisite documents to move the process forward. Birth certificate, identification, TRN, the least, and then you can move. No, that's in nursing homes or other private care facilities. Firstly, because I know that when we have loved ones who transition, who die, one of the thing for all of us is that the individual, the loved one, our loved one, goes to the place that we are most comfortable with, the place that we are all right with, the place that we want them to go. And so when you engage your care provider, nursing home, other private hospices or whatever, one conversation to have. And the truth is, having this conversation does not necessarily mean you're planning for your relatives to die. However, we must understand that death is a possibility, especially for older individuals with several complications. So one of the things you want to find out from that care facility, do you have a contracted funeral home that you work with if my relative dies? The answer may be yes, the answer may be no. You may be in need, and I know for the most part, these facilities will give you an update as to how well or how badly your relative is doing. And so one of the conversations that you need to have is that, one, do you have a particular funeral home that you use, you're contracted to? If yes, find out. Because you'll need to know if that's an entity that you are comfortable working with. If not, then you need to give specific instructions that at the time of your loved one's death, you need to be contacted before the services of any final care provider, any funeral home is engaged, because you want to have a say in where your loved one goes. I'm going through this because I have been asked to talk about this on the program. Questions were asked about it because there have been times when individual dies, a funeral home is called because this is the funeral home that the nursing home or the care facility works with. The family was not pleased with that, and then down the road it comes with issues because they either have to pay some funds to have their relative moved where they want, or the delay in the transfer is another issue. And so you need to have this conversation with your care provider, the nursing home, etc. So at the time of death, one less thing, one less hassle to have. Now, in these situations, by right, the services of an entity, any entity, funeral home, whatever, these services should not be engaged without your consent. What I'm simply saying, it can't be a case where your loved one dies in these care facilities, and then you are told down the road that the person has passed and he is at X, or he or she is at X or Y funeral home, or you have to be continuously asking where are the final remains for you to be told that they are at a particular funeral home. The procedure is that you must be contacted. You must be contacted so you can have a say in what happens. So it's a step-by-step process. However, where there are cases where this happens without your consent, then again, you calmly state to the nursing home, the final care providers, just ask them to provide you with a letter of release to take to this facility so you can have your loved one transferred to where you want. And the fact is, if you were not contacted in this decision-making process, you should not be charged. So let me come out to say this boldly. In cases where this has happened and you have been grieved with having to pay excess because you had not planned for it. Remember, you are doing business with the nursing home. You're doing business with the care facility. So they are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that the process, you are a part of the process. Where this happens, it costs you, without your consent, you should be reimbursed for this. So you need to engage. If you're getting, say for example, having a hard time, you maybe need to engage the services of an attorney. But in these situations where your relative dies in a private care facility and a private funeral home is contacted without your knowledge, and then when you go to do the removal, you are being charged for this type of service, then you need to be reimbursed whatever the charges are. As a matter of fact, the entity is supposed to be paying for the charges and not you. It's supposed to work exactly as how things work with the hospital. Where the hospitals have a privately contracted funeral home, the hospitals will pay for the storage until they give you the release. So if it's a situation that the nursing home or your private care facility will engage the service of another of a funeral home, by right they are to ensure that something is in place where until they provide you with a release letter, there should be no charge to you. And so these things, friends, we want you to bear in mind. I want you to bear in mind as we try to make things a little bit easier on you as you go through the process of grief and bereavement. We know, yes, we know that sometimes the process can be a bit tedious. There can be a lot of hassle to it. But our intent here on this program, Final Decision, heard on Mondays and Thursdays at 11:30 to 12 noon here on Omega KLS FM, our aim is to try to provide you, try to arm you with the information as the different scenarios may or may not play out in when you have to deal with the final disposition of a loved one. Our aim is to provide you with the information beforehand that if and when it happens, you can easily navigate through whatever is supposed to be done. The process can be easier for you, and of course, the whole thing will not add to your grief and to your grieving. And so just to recap today's program, with the limited time that we have left, just to recap today's program, and again, if you have any questions subsequent to this program, feel free to give me a call on 876-870-5848 or 876-327-9729. Let me go over those numbers again. 876-870-5848 or 876-327-9729. And of course, I am Mark Maitland, the General Manager for the Garden of Paradise Funeral Home located in Kingston. However, we're on the island of Jamaica, and even if you are listening from overseas on any of our apps, whether by the app or via the Facebook or the YouTube feed, then you may contact me as well. And of course, you have to put a 1 before that number. In programs coming up, we'll be dealing with how to cope or deal with deaths happening overseas, and the deceased is to be buried locally. So in a future program, we will cover all of that. But as I said before, just to recap, it is very important that we all have a birth certificate, a government-issued ID. It can be a national ID, passport, or driver's license. These are the 3 basics that we are used to and we use. And of course, a TRN. These documents help to get the process flowing easily. So at the time of death, these will be required. And they are required for record purposes and to ensure that the deceased is who we purport him or her to be, and that down the road there are no negative repercussions either for the facility, for the government, for any entity that has to deal with final disposition of an individual, nor there will be any negative repercussions for those who seek to put their loved ones to rest. We also dealt with what to do when someone dies in a hospital, and today on this program we talked about what to do when someone dies in a nursing home. Again, friends, I know that this is a program or a conversation that we are trying to warm up to, because death and dying is not something that we readily talk about. However, this is a conversation that we need to have. It has become an urgent conversation in light of the fact that when death does happen, individuals have complaints in relation to how the processes are done, how much charges they have to pay for different things, and most of all, the level of frustration that comes with dealing with the process for final internment or final disposition. And what we aim to do is to provide the information for you so that when you have this procedure to deal with, it is not as hard on you as it would have been had you not known. Individuals have been asking how soon we will be having a call-in segment to the program. We are working on that as well. And in a couple of weeks, we will allow you to play your part, our listeners to play your part, so you can call in with your questions, with your concerns, if you had any bit to add to the program so it enhances what we are giving, we'll be doing that. But I want to ask you again, I want to say to you from now, the aim of this program is to provide information and to provide clarity. It is not an avenue for criticism or tearing down any player in the funeral industry. If you have a bad experience and you want to articulate, we will allow that, but please do not call names here. Please do not come on this program, cuss off anybody, or as we say in Jamaica, badmouth anybody or any entity. The aim of the program is for you to air your concerns or your challenges so we can help you to smooth these things out. It is not for you to bash any player in the industry. So when we begin to open the lines to you and for you, please bear this in mind. And we ask you to be courteous and to be respectful in your delivery, and also to remember that we are on live radio. All right? So in a couple of weeks, we'll be engaging the public. But leading up to that, we want to ensure that we arm you with enough information, and also we get these things out of the way, because we find that these have become troubling matters and individuals have been asking about, what to do and how to navigate through these processes. And so we thought it very paramount that we at least get this out to you before, so that when we get to the conversational aspect of things, you'd have had the information, you know how to act on the information that you have, and so we can have a fluid conversation with information that we have and not just guess spelling. This is our program for today. It has been Final Decision. We look forward to having you join us again on Monday, 11:30, when we do it again. Thank you so much for your time.
Forever. And if you trust in the Lord, your nights will turn to day. Just remember.
This is KLAS FM, owned and operated by Omega